Hi, it's Calder from Singing Matters here once again with more lessons from a singer, vocal coach who had such bad technique that I ended up with an operation on my voice. More about that at another time. Today's lesson: how long does it take to learn to sing? Or how much time do I need to give this task of learning to sing or improving my voice? It'd be completely damaging and inaccurate for me to just give you a one-size-fits-all answer, but that's what I'm going to do. It takes years, right? It takes absolutely ages. It takes a long time. That's the answer I want you to take in, whether you've been singing for years already, and even more so actually, or whether you're a new beginner and you're just trying to delve into it and wondering why it's not so easy, and you think, maybe I can't do this. Why is it taking so long for me to get good at this? Singing's not supposed to be easy, although I watched a video the other day where she literally said the opposite. Singing is easy. Singing is way easier than you think it is. I love vocal coaching and the world of vocal coaching because there are so many contradictions out there and everyone's right in a lot of the time. That's the annoying thing about it and the difficult thing to understand. But how long does it take? I would say to you, for anyone who's trying to understand how to fix their voice, see it as a long lifetime journey. Not something where you work on it for a couple of weeks, a few weeks, have a few sessions. It takes months and months and months and months and months to retrain, develop muscle memory and change habits or create good habits in your voice. And there are a lot of reasons for that. It might seem that some people just understand how to sing. They understand singing technique just intuitively, really easily, effortlessly, and their voice doesn't struggle or strain. You may have come across people who seem to just get into their high range without any problems, and everything sort of works pretty well. These people are lucky, and you might call it talent. I'm a bit weird about talent after a load of studies I did in my dissertation when I was studying for my degree. I'll go into that in another video. But for some people, singing does seem a little bit easier than others. Some people are pretty lucky with their physical attributes, and I think that's a huge part of what makes it easy for some people and not so for others. The voice just sails out of them, no strain. But they might not have the confidence of someone who is really expressive and belongs on stage and loves the stage and is really into that side of things, is just naturally able to get up and perform. Someone who naturally sings really well does not mean they naturally perform really well and don't maybe express their voice perfectly well or with nuance and dynamic, and that can take a long time even if you have a relatively good voice already and a relatively easy use technique wise of your voice. So it's different for different people, and I think it takes a lot of different things to make a singer. And some of it's the confidence and the stagecraft and the sort of, that expressive side of people. And some of it's the physical attributes. Some of it's the just natural tone and how fortunate you are with that. But for everyone, we need to see it as a lifelong journey. It's something you're constantly trying to work on. It took me a long time to fix the things that were going on in my voice, and part of the reason for that is because I was singing every week. I was just singing and singing and singing and singing and singing and singing and singing, and even though I was trying to study, I was trying to learn, I was going to students, I was going for lessons, I was doing courses, I was learning online, gradually more and more and more and more. I just did this stuff, trying to crack it. It felt so impossible, it felt so unreachable, just completely not in a world I could ever understand myself getting to. And then I'd try and fix some things. I might get somewhere, but I'd be straight back to old habits as soon as I went out to do a gig. So it can be really hard when you sing a lot to improve things. And when people come, and I can see it a mile off sometimes, they come for lessons and they just want a couple of tips. They just want a few tips. They want a couple of ideas. They want a little bit of assistance, a little bit of a kind of encouragement in the right direction type thing. It's probably going to take more than that, all right? It's guaranteed to take more than that, especially if you're an established singer, and they can be the hardest in some ways to work with because they have such ingrained habits that have been created over a period of time. So we should see vocal coaching, vocal technique as a long road of discovery that really never ends. And as my coach said to me, Lynn Hilton, great teacher, the voice is a moving target. and I have quoted this so many times because it is so relevant in so many different instances to remind people that it doesn't matter whether you sang well yesterday, today's a different day, and it might not be in the same state. You're not in the same state. You might be more tired. You might have had a different diet today that you've been eating. Maybe if you sang yesterday, your voice is worn out from that, and therefore it needs to be approached slightly differently, needs a bit more warming up to get it to where it was yesterday. It's a different voice the second day. It's a different voice next week. Okay, there are lots of things that affect it, and that's again why vocal training can be so difficult. If you have some things that you want to work on and improve, then there might be a lot to learn. The voice is made up of several moving parts and has some things attached to it that are incredibly instinctive, reflexive, and involuntary. So your swallowing muscles, your tongue, the epiglottis, all these things that are linked to saving your life if something's trying to go down the airway that you don't want to. Even the vocal cords themselves are involved in that survival instinct as they are involved in opening and closing when you breathe. All of this stuff is being used all the time. Apparently we swallow hundreds of times a day or something, apparently. So I'm doing it now. So that stuff here all gets engaged when we try to sing, because the brain can't really differentiate between all those extrinsic parts and those intrinsic parts, and everything grabs and we get this tension. So that's a good start for understanding why it takes years of training, because we are manipulating parts of us that we don't really have any control over. So we have to try and isolate the different parts of ourselves to get control over them so they can get out of the way of singing, and free up the voice. Most people experience some sort of strain and struggle getting into the high notes effectively. Most people have things they want to improve in how they sound, and more often than not it takes them a lot of technical study and practice, more than they thought from the outset. Like I said a minute ago, you can predict with some students what's going to happen. They walk in and they say, I just want a couple of tips, or a few tips and a few ideas, a couple of lessons to point me in the right direction. Well, I'm sorry to break it to you. A couple of lessons might help the teacher highlight some of what's going on, but you might not even begin to understand that, depending on how much you've looked into this stuff before. You might not know what the teacher means. So a couple of lessons is going to give some information about what's going on that may be hard to compute, and it's certainly not going to mean you're going to fix it in 2 lessons. There are the odd occasion where people seem able to make things change quickly. Fine, great. They're more of an anomaly than a rule, and that doesn't mean they're singing perfectly how they want to. It just means they were able to change habits quickly. Maybe they've not sung so much, so the habits weren't so well formed. But when someone's been out gigging, performing, recording, whatever, a lot, you've got years and years of habit built up. So try not to expect it to be quick, because seriously it won't be. And rushing it, having that mindset of thinking you just want a couple of lessons or a few lessons, you're going to miss crucial details because you're kind of brushing over things and you're like, do I really have to do that? When I talk about this, I know, because I was one of you. I was one of them, right? And I know this because I was like it. It took me a lot of gradual peeling back the layers of delving into this stuff and daring to just allow yourself to let your defenses go down. It's not all about and ego and confidence and stuff, and the more that's going on, the less you're going to learn, unfortunately. It takes a while to break that down and just use the voice, not do this big performance. And some students come in and it's like a big performance, and I have to just give them time to get over that and start to just work with the voice, make sounds, sing scales, exercises, play with things, and not be trying to do something big all the time. So there's a lot to understand, and my big message to you is to take vocal technique seriously. Be a nerd about it. Become a vocal student. If it's your main instrument, if it's your main or only instrument, if it's the main thing and it's the focus of anyone's music, if you're a singer, it's the focus of the music you do because you're a singer. That's the point. It's what we want to listen to. It's the main point of most music. If there's a voice in there, it's the focus. give it some respect, make it your main focus, and treat it like an instrument. I talk from experience. I never learned anything properly. I was a drummer, but I didn't want to learn properly how to read and how to play rudiments and stuff. I was quite capable on the drums, could have been way better than I was if I'd had some discipline and learned things properly. Story of my life. I'm certainly not a person who's learned how to play the guitar properly, but when it came to the voice, I had to fix it. I had to get this worked out. It felt like it was the one instrument that needed that attention to detail that I really should be putting the time into. The one thing that I can, I don't know, maybe it's the one thing I had really in the end as a musician. So I was so determined and dedicated to fixing it. But I had an operation on my voice before I got there. You see, the damage can be done, and not everyone's going to end up like that. I was using my voice pretty badly, and I wasn't using it very healthily outside of singing as well, and it was terrible. Not everyone's going to end up with an operation, but there is a long list of professional singers and superstars who've had to have operations. It's a lot easier to do that when you have access to the absolute highest possible medical people and surgeons, and then the money and freedom to rehabilitate for as long as you need. We're not all in that situation. I went back to gigging way too quick. My voice was immeasurably better. My technique was fixed because I'd worked it out and I'd had enough of a break that it all went in. I talked about this before, but I went back to gigging way too soon. I did a very long gig. My first gig back was like 4 hours of singing or something, where I did 2 solo sets and 2 band sets, which is a lot of singing for anyone in any day. And it was my first gig back after an operation. I don't think I did it the best of good. I don't think it healed as well as it should have done because I had to go out and work and earn money. So you don't want to put yourself in this sort of situation. I'm not suggesting people who want to learn to sing are going to end up with an operation if they don't. Of course not. Most people won't. But it's more delicate than you think, and it's worth the respect of looking after it. It really is. So I was singing 3, 4, 5, 6 or even 7 nights a week back then, in the early days especially, and there was just no opportunity for the learning I was doing to sink in, because the habits just came back and came back and came back every time I went out to a gig. So please start now. Give your voice some respect. Don't brush over things, and seek to understand, seek to learn. Be humble enough to just drop the kind of defence. And we need confidence. If you are performing a lot, you need confidence to go out there and perform. And when you're stripping back everything that you do in your voice and you're trying to understand it, it loses confidence, because you're picking it apart and you've never thought about it in such a way, and you're suddenly really self-conscious, suddenly having to think that what you're doing is not right, and it ruins it, and it can take you backwards. But it's better to do that than stay stuck where you are if you've got things that are not right. It's tricky. You need to feel confident as a performer, and you need to feel secure in what you're doing, and the voice will feel more secure doing something that is bad for the voice, but it knows what you're going to get from it, and you know what you're going to get from it if you do that old habit. Even if it's causing damage, you will still go back to it, and that's the thing, because it feels more safe, it feels more secure. You know what you're going to get. Even if it's terrible and it feels wrong, you're more safe doing what you know, and that's a tricky pattern to get out of. So that's part of the reason why it takes time as well. It's definitely one of those things where it's 2 steps backwards and 1 step forward, 2 steps backwards, 3 steps forward eventually. But I was lucky. I got a break at the right time when I needed it, and I needed an operation. I had a break, and I just was doing so much work that all the training went in, and I was like, suddenly I knew my technique was going to be improved, even though the voice was in a really bad state. But again, that's me. If you are thinking about taking lessons, you think there's something you want to fix in your voice, just cut the crap and get into it. Get into it. Become a nerd. Become a singer. Become a master of your instrument, and become an absolute vocal nerd. That's what I say to you. That's my advice, given my experience. I did it. There's still stuff I want to learn more. There's still things I want to improve. There's still things I could do better. It's a lifelong journey and it changes all the time. Especially when you're working with a voice a lot, it goes up and down, it ebbs and flows, it has days that are different to others. So yeah, if you don't kind of understand how you are generating sound with your voice and what you're actually doing with it, how do you make the sound, what's going on, how do you make it sound different, how do you make it feel different, then there's so much for you to learn, and I really advise you to do so. And you can learn a lot off YouTube. Certainly helped me, but you'll get more with a coach as well. Speaking of which, if you're interested in lessons or if you want a consultation just to help you understand what's going on, do a free 15-minute call, which is usually half an hour. You can book that on the link in the description, as you can lessons. I never take payment until I've actually spoken to someone, so it's just a calendar, booking a slot. It's easy going. If people choose not to do it, they choose not to do it, but you can book a slot, and then we have a chat, and then we get booked in, and we sort out the money stuff later on down the line. That's my lesson for today. I'm very much imploring people, if you've got a hint in your mind that you should do some training or work on your voice a little bit, then you should. And please do it, and see it as a long journey of development that you might take on. As always, all the best with your singing, and I'll see you in the next video.